Welcome to All Things Autism by Court One, where we explore the many facets that autism support, awareness, and advocacy. I'm Manav, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Nandini, Niyati, and Shashir.
Today we'll be talking about supporting growth, a family-centered approach to autism development. Routine is key, and families need to follow routines in order to keep with children, especially with those on the autism spectrum.
Today, we're honored to have Kim Labriola with us. Kim is the Family Success Program Manager and a Development Consultant at Child and Adolescent Behavioral Services in Canton, Ohio. She's dedicated to supporting families and children with autism through a family-centered approach. Kim, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
To start, can you share a bit about your background and how you became involved in autism advocacy and family-centered approaches?
Yes, so I attended Bowling Green State University as an undergrad student. My bachelor's degree was in child and family studies with an emphasis on being a child life specialist. Right after graduating, I joined child and adolescent behavioral health as what we would refer to as a case manager, helping families in the community link their children to different resources and needs that they might need. I then received a few years later after being at Child and Adolescent, I received my master's degree through Ashland University, a master's in education with an emphasis on early childhood curriculum. I then became one of our case management program managers here at the agency and worked very tightly with Dr. Jane Holland from University Hospitals, who was a developmental pediatrician. Under her guidance and working with her, we supported families that would come in looking for a certain diagnosis of anything that was developmentally connected to the child. After that, I would walk the families through the necessary resources through Stark County here to get the child anything that they needed that was based upon any of the diagnosis, mainly being autism.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So to kick off our episode, first we want to ask, what does a family-centered approach to autism development look like in practice?
Well, a family-centered approach would be where you are actually working with the family and any other providers that are engaged with the family and the child. So it might be helping support the family get linked to an actual testing facility that does the ADOS, which is our autistic diagnostic testing. It might be getting the child connected to a preschool program based upon coordinating an IEP or a 504B for the family, working with any of the specialists that the child works with, which might be an occupational therapist for sensory integration disorder. It could be a speech therapist to improve overall speech and language and communication delays that a child might have. It might be working with a psychiatrist to help find the right medication for a child, and also working with any outside behavioral and mental health organizations in order to provide behavioral and parenting support to the family.
Thank you for that information. How does it differ from traditional models of therapy or support?
Well, most therapists that work with autistic kids specialize in the area of autism. Most of the kids that have an autistic diagnosis are also linked with our local Board of Developmental Disabilities so that they can receive a SSA, which is a service support administrator through the Board of DD that helps walk the family through all the necessary referrals and resources for a family. It also might be that a child is working with an occupational therapy that specializes in sensory integration disorder in order to help the child decrease emotional and self-regulation and helping them learn how to cope with different resistance to textures, food adversities, clothing. So an occupational therapist is a big advocate for a child that has autism because they usually have a diagnosis with sensory as well.
That's a great approach, Kim. So why do you think it's so important to involve the entire family when supporting a child with autism rather than focusing solely on the individual?
Well, you know what? A family definitely needs support. And I will tell you one great training that we do for parents here at Child and Adolescent is what we call the Triple P, the Positive Parenting Program. Everybody that is part of a child's life, once they have been diagnosed with autism, it is great to get them all on the same page with the interventions that we want them to use with that child. We want each person too that is working with that child to be able to speak the same language, communicate the same things to that child in an overall appropriate way. It's really important to have the family approach because the whole family is involved once a diagnosis occurs. We like to have the family involved so that even siblings can understand, okay, maybe my sister or brother is a little bit different from me and they need some extra areas of need and intervention from my parent at times. Um, a family center approach is always necessary when working actually with any child, even if it is not a child with autism.
That's great. So when speaking of support, what are some of the biggest challenges families can face when it's trying to implement autism support strategies at home or even a different environment?
Yeah, so sometimes families will face barriers throughout the system, maybe due to income eligibility, not being able to afford certain services for their child. Sometimes insurance does not cover what a child needs underneath the autism diagnosis. So sometimes they need a service and support like our agency that can help walk the family through navigating the system, finding resources that are out there and available to help support that child with getting different therapies that they might need, getting them linked to a school that is going to well serve their educational and all of their overall developmental needs.
It seems like parents can sometimes feel overwhelmed. How can we,
Absolutely.
yeah, how could we possibly empower parents to become active participants in their children's development?
Well, we know that the parent is a child's first teacher and they are their biggest advocate as well. So, a family really needs to get out there and look into what services are available to their child. I will tell you, early intervention, Help Me Grow, is very pertinent through the first 3 years for brain development for a child, especially an autistic child. Families can go to their child's pediatrician and ask for referrals to different therapies, such as speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and it might even be behavioral health therapy or a very specialized therapy that autistic kids sometimes can be connected to is what we call ABA, Applied Behavioral Analysis Therapy. So the parent is definitely the child's best advocate, but sometimes they need organizations like ourselves that can help the family actually walk through this process, help help them with making phone calls and getting referrals to the different resources that the child might need once they have a diagnosis of autism.
Yeah, that was some really good points. Thank you for that. And we can see that this pressure in parents has increased significantly, even more with the lack of developmental pediatricians and adequate specialists on a
That
national
is
level.
true. And I will tell you, since COVID, the wait list has become very long for children to see developmental pediatricians. I think most places, hospitals surrounding the Stark County area, such as Akron Children's, University Hospitals, the Cleveland Clinic, Rainbow Babies, they have almost over a year wait for some of these kids to get in and actually have the ADOS testing completed. So I will tell you, while waiting for the appointment and getting in to see a developmental ped, some of us that work in the community help these parents get linked to other resources in the meantime, such as getting them to their local school districts to get testing to see if they will qualify for an IEP, just to get some special education while they're actually waiting for that true diagnosis from a developmental pediatric.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for defining that waiting period. In fact, actually, experts at the American Academy of Pediatrics have quantified that there's only 758 board certified behavioral and developmental pediatricians on a national scale, which kind
Wow.
of really highlights this lack and disparity that we see throughout the
Yes.
entire United States.
That is very true. I did not realize those statistics. We definitely could use more developmental pediatricians, in our surrounding counties and this county alone as well. We do have different organizations throughout Stark County that there are some psychologists that are actually trained to complete the ADOS on kids. So we do try to link families up to those outside organizations if their insurance will take them. That way they do not have such a long of a wait list, but overall, you are correct. There is quite a bit of a wait um, to get into a developmental ped.
Yeah, and going off of that, how do you recommend that parents navigate the system with fused physicians since this is a big problem nowadays?
I just tell families, talk to your pediatrician, talk to your child's doctor to see what are the resources, who can they connect you with throughout our community here. What organizations that work with kids with developmental delays, behavioral concerns, sensory issues, get referrals to those organizations and start the process. Have your pediatrician make a referral to help me grow in early intervention. The earlier, the better. Um, I always state that the first 3 years are super important for a child's brain development. Get them into any social programming that you possibly can do, but advocate and ask for referrals. Parents are the number one advocate for their child, and all they need to do is ask, call around, talk to your local school systems, talk to your preschools, your daycares, and even your local Head Starts. But you need to really advocate for what your child needs. And sometimes your pediatrician is going to be one of your best advocates as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think advocacy and communication is really the key to navigating all of this. But what role does communication play in a family-centered approach, both within the families and between families and professionals?
Yeah. Well, I will tell you that there needs to be really good open communication between parents and the providers of that child that they're working with. Number one, when I go out and do a developmental consult, I kind of review like the mom's pregnancy, any concerns during pregnancy, delivery, what did the developmental milestones look like? What have they already tried to connect with within the county through their pediatrician? Have they tried any other referral and resource basis? And then I try to start with linking a family to either a family success coach here at our agency or a QMHS, which is kind of a case manager that can actually go into the home, help the family with linking to anything that they possibly might need. Like I said, again, hand hold them through making phone calls, helping them make decisions that are in the best interest of their child's development and education. Working with the family as a whole is very, very important, and making sure that you have everybody part of their treatment plan as well, so that everybody is on the same page, communicating the same thing, and providing the same interventions all around.
Yeah, absolutely. And going along with that, like application-based standpoint, I'd love to hear if you've had examples or stories where a family-centered approach made a significant difference in a child's development or overall well-being.
Oh, absolutely. It's funny. I still keep in contact with a family who the child just graduated from high school last year. And I worked with him when he was 3 and 4. And we got him into a specialized school district that really worked for him, met his needs, had an IEP, and the child it graduated and is going on to college. I can remember a local school district saying, that they really had concerns about what his development and what kind of goals he would have as he got older, and he defied everything that they had thought he would not achieve, and he's doing fantastic. He is attending college. He's independently functioning on his own in his own apartment, so he's doing fantastic. But he got early intervention right at the very important piece of development. So we started to work with him at a very young age and made sure he got every resource that he possibly needed to be successful.
What do you think is the essential development stage in early intervention?
I definitely think that 0 to 3 is very important. Getting them any of those early therapies that you can. At age 3, the Board of Developmental Disabilities will help with what we call transitioning to preschool years, and their early intervention Help Me Grow early childhood coordinator can help them then get into a specialized preschool if needed, where they can spend then another 2 to 3 years before entering kindergarten. So those early years are very, very important to a child with autism, and making sure to get connected to Help Me Grow in early intervention.
Speaking of support, what types of resources do families need most when raising a child with autism or ASD? And how can communities or community-based organizations help to ensure that when we raise a child with ASD, they get the proper support that is needed?
Yeah, I definitely think it needs to start with making sure that you get an appropriate diagnosis as soon as you can, and then linking to the resources that are out there, such as your local Board of Developmental Disabilities, so that you can get a service support administrator. You also can get some support with what we call family engagement programs, along with your local school district, to provide any therapies that they might need after the age of 3, getting on an IEP, an individualized education plan, so that you are monitoring the child's goals on a yearly basis to see what growth and development they have made, along with any other outside community organizations that focus on social emotional skills, sensory needs. Some children need an AAC device to help with their communication skills. Sometimes they need behavior management because some kids with autism have severe communication delays and cannot express appropriately their wants and needs. And that leads to behavior because they become easily frustrated. So any early support and any local resources that a family can get a hold of is amazing. I know here at Child and Adolescent, we work with families of all ages with kids that have a diagnosis of autism, just making sure that they are getting all the proper therapies that they need in order to be successful in their day-to-day functioning and their overall role in society.
Yeah, thank you so much for mentioning the variability and how each experience on the spectrum is in fact different. Early support is a really crucial thing, and I think you really just highlighted that.
Yes, it is. And, I'm going to say one thing about Stark County. Stark County is very rich in resources for families. Even us here at Child and Adolescent, we provide early childhood prevention services to a lot of our local preschools, daycare, and child care centers. We provide support in all of the local school districts within Stark County. I go out when a family calls in to see all the kids 8 and under before they actually get connected to any of our clinical services, in order to see exactly what they need. Do they really need behavioral and mental health support? Does a family maybe just need some parenting support through our Triple P positive parenting program? Do they need connected to our family success network and get a family success coach that can help navigate the system for them? So Stark County is definitely rich in resources that families can obtain any of the different resources through United Way as well.
Thank you for that. One of the things that I've noticed is that there happens to be a lot of misconceptions about autism. What are some of the most common misconceptions that you feel need to be addressed, especially when it comes to supporting families?
Gosh, that's a really good question. And I think that there's just misconceptions overall that, oh gosh, they can never be a fully functioning. Every autistic child can be fully functioning at whatever level we can get them to. That's why the earlier, the better to get them into any programming is what we want. We want to provide support to those families to ensure there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are so many services out in our community for autistic kids that families really need to engage with them and get them linked to them so that they can be a fully functioning adult in society someday.
That's a great point, and thank you for including that. So now, how do we navigate the balance between promoting independence in children with autism and providing the necessary family support simultaneously?
I think that we do that every day here, especially at Child and Adolescent. We support the individual at whatever level they are at, also while supporting the parent and meeting the parent where they are at. I've worked with some parents that, you know, it sometimes can be difficult to come to the realization that their child might have a developmental delay or be disabled or have an autism diagnosis. Being supportive is the number one thing that we can do to these parents in order to provide a family centered way of treatment and intervention, and just providing and letting families know all the different resources that are available to children throughout Stark County.
Yeah, that balance is tricky in some cases, but support is really imperative, and you really mentioned that. What kind of training or education do you think that families or professionals need to support a family-centered approach?
Um, I think that really depends. I would say, I have coaches that just have lived experience with their own children that don't necessarily have a degree, but they can work with the families because they are sympathetic and empathetic to what these families have gone through. They've been there. They've, have hit some brick roads that they've had to try to navigate. So, you know, it doesn't take a degree. A lot of it can be just lived experience. Also, a lot of social workers are great at getting families linked to what they need, along with our educational systems as well, and our local pediatricians.
That's great. So, looking ahead, what changes or advancements would you like to see in the way we approach autism support from a family perspective in specific?
I think we need more developmental pediatricians. Number one, to start off with, in order to help do that diagnosis. But you know, Stark County has a lot of resources here in town to provide to families, and any family can always call in to our agency and ask for a developmental consultation where I come out to the home, or they can come here to the office and meet with me, and I just kind of review the family's concerns and what areas of need the family is looking for. And then I try to connect the family to the best fit of any resource that is available to them.
Thank you. That's it for today's episode of All Things Autism. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you've really provided us with some crucial insights on family-based support.
Yeah, for sure. And finally, don't forget to follow Court One for more updates and resources, and stay tuned for our next podcast episode. And for our listeners, until next time, please take care. Thank you.